Good morning to everyone, and welcome to today's Respondents Conference for the first phase of the Independent Transmission Projects Procurement Program, which in short we refer to as the ITP Procurement Program. I must say it is really quite encouraging that so far we have received over 700 participants who have registered today to participate in this national and international event. And that's very, very quite encouraging. I mean, the participants, they range from the respondents, the potential respondents as potential bidders, as well as the suppliers, the stakeholders, governments, who are our partners in this initiative. Indeed, it is quite a very historic event for the country, in that for the first time, we are going to witness the private sector participating in the great infrastructure development in the country. It's quite a novel initiative that government has launched indeed. Now, for the purpose of today's conference, we will then provide the potential bidders and the market with more insights into the request for pre-qualification. I must underline, it's a pre-qualification stage of the procurement process, which we would all know it was launched on the 30th of July this year. And then from there, we will then allow in the process, then we'll then take everyone who's involved in this process or who's on the platform through the background to the 7 projects that have been selected for the first phase. You will recall the Honorable Minister has been making a lot of announcements around the ITP program through various platforms. And then we'll take a deep dive at each of the pre-qualification criteria. Pre-qualification criteria that are outlined in the RFP pack, which probably most of you would have been able to access through the ITP website. And then once we have done that, we'll start off with the presentations from our various speakers. We've got 4 speakers that are lined up to take us through the different elements of the RFQ in more detail, just to also sort of clarify further some of the concepts that are contained in the RFP. Then what we will then do also is to have a brief Q&A, because we don't have this session taking place the whole day. So that will happen at the end of the presentation. And we do encourage everyone to sort of utilize the Q&A button on this platform, so that you can pose all the questions that you may have. But I must also remind everyone that if you look at the RFQ document itself, we do have a clause 24, which talks to the contact policy that we all have to adhere to pre and post appointment as a pre-qualified bidder, meaning that you must always make sure that you don't contact the office or the department directly. You have to utilize a dedicated email address, which is query@itp-projects.co.za. So it's very, very important that we adhere to those communication protocols, because all that is important is that we need to have a sort of a paper trail of whatever we are doing under this project for transparency. So once you utilize that Q&A platform, we will then endeavor to get to all the questions, but we'll then follow up with a briefing note where we will then provide written responses to the questions that we have received. Already there are questions that we have received, and as part of the briefing note, together with the questions that will emanate from today's session, we'll then put everything together and place them on the ITP webpage. Then today's session also, you must note, it will then be recorded for ease of future reference. If there are any issues that you want to go back and check, you'll be able to go back and review the video recordings, and it will be placed on the department's social channels. Please do feel free to share these presentations to all the stakeholders and everybody in your networks, because we do believe that the more the merrier. The wider the coverage, the better. Now, with that, let me start by then jump straight into our next item on the agenda by welcoming the Honorable Minister Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, who will then deliver a keynote address and scene setting. And then after that, it will be followed by the various presentations. You will know that the minister needs no introduction in the space because of his prominence and visibility. I can tell you even a 5-year-old from a remote village in the country will be able to tell you who that minister is because of his visibility. On that note, Minister, let me hand over to you and deliver the keynote address for the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kgosientsho, and good morning to everyone on the call. Let me first take the opportunity to express on behalf of Cabinet, the President and the country, our most sincere appreciation at all of you for first expressing an interest to participate in this trailblazing exercise, as Kgosientsho has mentioned. I think this just brings some degree of confidence in relation to the work that we're attempting to do to ensure that we are able to turn around the South African economy. I've prepared just a few slides just to take you through what is the fundamental question that we are answering. Of course, you are market players, you are interested in the returns, whether the risk involved are such that they meet your expectations and the kind of returns that you are projecting. But I think it's important that I give you assurance that this is a very big part of the country's transformation of the electricity ecosystem in our country, and also illustrate to you that there are policy issues that have been adjusted to ensure that we protect the process that we are starting today. And this process is going to be a mainstay of the reforms in the electricity industry in our country. The seventh administration, the Government of National Unity, has articulated three priority areas. The one is to create jobs and grow the economy. The second one is to ensure that we address the cost of living and address the issues of poverty in our country. And the third one is to ensure that we build an ethical, capable, and developmental state. So that's what the president has announced to the country. And the expectation is that the individual ministries will then generate, if you like, supporting priorities that are meant to reinforce or undergird the three priority areas for apex priority areas of the country. For the Department of Energy and Electricity, we have 5 that we have set for ourselves. So the first one is to ensure that we are able to achieve universal access. Many of you know that the levels of penetration and electricity penetration in our country is the highest level on the continent. We're sitting at about 94% penetration. The intention is to ensure that we achieve through universal access, and our own computation suggests that we need to connect about 1.6 million households for us to be able to achieve some degree of universal access. I'm saying some degree of universal access because this is a moving target, and our own definition, working definition of universal access is if we achieve a 97% plus, because there'll always be if you like, households that are under construction or delays in connections. And that's why you'll not be able at any given moment, if you have to do a cross-sectional study, you'll never get to achieve 100% connectivity. But we're also making the point that electricity ought to be affordable and available all the time. So availability has been attended to. Affordability is something that still requires our attention. And in our view, if we were to reconfigure the energy mix, if you like, a structural reconfiguration of the energy mix, by that I mean a greater penetration of renewables supported by base load, we are likely going to cap the rising cost of electricity. And we want to draw it from green sources of electricity, conversion of renewable, in particular wind and solar. Of course, there are hydro resources from Mozambique and also from Lesotho. We intend to exploit those. So transmission is a big part of it. So for us to be able to achieve that ambition of affordability and availability, we need to build our transmission line. We need to modernize it. And in so doing, we intend to achieve both the sovereign and regional energy security. We are the biggest anchor of energy generation in the region, and the demand is increasing in the region. We think that we are better placed, given the historic position that we have enjoyed, to continue to anchor the regional energy security ambition. So we want to position ourselves in that way. We will be approving tomorrow. The subcommittee of cabinet is looking at what we call the IRP. I'm confident it will go through. It's a 2.2 trillion rand investment. We want to have add another 40 gigawatts of renewables in the next 10 years. 15 of those must come in the next 5 years. So it's an ambitious plan, but for it to succeed, it requires great availability. And then we want to drive industrialization and lead innovation. So industrialization is a big part. I'll show you that the program we're introducing is a $25 billion program over the next 10 years. So, I mean, every country will, when it has a size of this investment, will design the program in such a manner that it's able to broaden the industrial flow. We are able to introduce new skills, reskill people so that we increase the participation rates in the South African economy, and we are able to address the challenge of unemployment. And like I said, we want to bring young people, women into the equation. And that's the question around the demographics. And I did make the point earlier on. We are the leader in relation to renewable energy penetration. We're sitting at just above 20% of the total mix. I've made the point that by 2035, we want to take this the penetration to over 60%. So that's the ambition we have, and for that to be achieved, we need to build on the transmission. The next slide, we'll talk to some degree of detail on what is it that we want to achieve. Just to make the point that it is important that there's that appreciation of that which we're trying to achieve. So like I said, the program is going to about 14,000 kilometers of new lines in the next 10 years. And we hope to unblock in the immediate, the current phase that we are launching today, 3,200 megawatts of generation capacity renewables. And of course, we want to unlock the potential in the Cape provinces, the Northern Cape, Eastern Cape, and Western Cape. That's where we have grid capacity constraints, but that's where we have the best sources of renewables. So we're very deliberate in how we're going to unlock this potential. So we're targeting those corridors that in the shortest possible space of time, we're able to unlock these resources. I did make the point the last time that when I was introducing this program, I did make the point that what we intend to do is to ensure that we have a late stage tender procurement process. What do I mean by that? Is that the state will invest in ensuring that we resolve the issues of permitting and licensing, issues such as water use license, issues such as EIAs, the right of way. We want to resolve all of those so that when you participate, all you are interested in is to deliver on the project, so that we don't introduce risks that can better be addressed by the state. We want to eliminate those early. We have made significant reforms in the space. Some of the advances we have made is that we have introduced a new wheeling framework. What that does, it allows for third-party transportation of electricity. So that's going to enable the private market. So a private developer and a private off-taker, they're able to transact outside the bid windows. And we can see that the more we build and improve on our grids, the greater the chances of us enabling private sector a market to thrive within the context of a new dispensation the reforms that we have introduced. We are currently resolving the issues around grid access with the I've assigned NERSA, which is our regulator, to ensure that there's clear grid access rules. It's a rules-based approach that we are advocating for, and I'm more than confident that NERSA will be able to address that in the next 3 months. That should be done and dusted. I'm making this point just to illustrate the intensity of the policy reforms that we're introducing, so that we have a better appreciation that the reform agenda is irreversible in the country. The next slide, really what we were attempting to do is to show you the roadmap. So we are here, we have gone out for request for information sometime last year. It's an important part of the work that we are doing, so that we test market appetite to participate in a program of this nature, but also help us to better design the program going forward. So we are confident that the product that we have produced is one that has been sufficiently canvassed by market players. So we are not introducing anything novel. A lot of the issues that the colleagues will be sharing with you can be found in other jurisdictions around the world. So we are not reinventing the wheel. We are simply giving it South African nuances and characteristics, but really there's nothing major that has not been done in other parts of the world. We have introduced the regulations so that there's a disciplined manner with which we are going to undertake this process. Again, it's a reaffirmation of government stance to ensure that the project or the program has got integrity, is insulated from any kind of doubt. It's predictable in how we're going to discharge and prosecute this program, and that's why we invested a lot in the granularity of the parameters that are going to inform this program in the form of the regulations. So those are out. So we went out for request for qualification, and I guess that's why you are here. And then in November we will request for proposal. We are going to stick to the timelines. I think you'd have seen that every timeline that we have committed to, we have delivered on it. So I always say to the team that the credibility of a program is measured in relation to, amongst others, its promise in relation to the timelines. So these are the timelines that we had promised, and these are the timelines that we have kept. Then the next slide really talks to what is it that we want to achieve. Like I said, it's not just the megawatts on the grid, it's also about broadening the industrial base of the country, making sure that there's a participation of local players, and that's why we are very strong on the issues of ownership. We have gone around the world, and we have come to accept that the market accepts that this is a condition that every sovereign government will introduce in a program of this magnitude. Like I said, there's other ambitions over and above just getting the megawatts on the grid, is to ensure that there's a qualitative transformation of the economic relations of society and manufacturing. Of course, we're engaging with DTIC. We'll finalize with Minister Tau whether those areas to be compulsory, that they be procured locally without undermining the commercial viability of the program, but also ensuring that we're able to repower our manufacturing base. So if you look at the performance of the economy, manufacturing, the primary sector of the economy, and the secondary sectors like manufacturing are the ones that are complicit to the decline of the contraction of the economy and decline in the levels of employment. So we want to use this program as one of the foundational pillars of our ambition to restart the South African economy. And like I said, the demographics is a need for us to ensure that there's greater participation of youth and women in the program, and also the point that we want to create quality jobs. I'm raising these issues so that when you enter this program, you have an appreciation of But the technical elements are both engineering and financial, but then there are also socio-economic ambitions that we are addressing. So I think it's important that we're transparent in that which we want to achieve. And then it's about the skills that we want to engender in our country so that this transition is just as we change the mix of generation in our country, electricity generation, we're able to skill and reskill people to participate in the new energy mix for our country. So the just element in the just transition talks to the degree to which we are able to accommodate socio-economic ambition. So it's not just about greening. That's a narrow interpretation of what just is. It's about ensuring that the net employment is positive. Of course, there's a greater level of opportunity, both or in particular downstream and midstream of the program that we are introducing. And like I said, the socio-economic elements are going to be key. And then the next slide really is just a reaffirmation of this detail the colleagues will share with you. I mean, that's the point I was making earlier on. We're very deliberate on the first phase. We want to unlock 3 gigawatts of new generation capacity. There's about 2,600 MVA of transformer capacity that we're building. I mean, in the bigger scale of things, this is small. I mean, it's 1,164 kilometers. But what we said to the team is that let's start, and then we'll scale up. And at the peak of this program, remember we said it's got a 10-year horizon. We should be building over 2,700 kilometers. So that's our level of ambition. But the point is that we have to start there. So the team will take you through the more nuanced and granular details of this. I just needed to lift this so that there's an appreciation of that which we intend to achieve. And then as I conclude, I really want to make the point that we have, as I've said, design our transmission development plan. It's an overarching plan that informs how we're going to and how we see the expansion of transmission in our country, and then we then articulate that in cycles of about 5 years. But what we are introducing is an ITP program over a period of 10 years. Like I said, the next rounds will be significantly greater than the first one. But the point was that we ought to start and build the confidence and credibility in the program. And we're really using the template of the IPP. We started small with the bid windows. And I think we introduced a degree of certainty. The program matured, market confidence in the program grew, and we're able to ensure that there's consistent bid windows. Of course, others were undermined bid windows 6, 7 as a result of capacity constraints in the grid. So that's why it is important that we are able to ensure that we unleash this program. We learned from the bid windows with regards to generation capacity that the start-stop undermines the degree to which industries are able to invest in manufacturing. Capacity utilization is not consistent because the program was erratic. So what we want to do is to ensure that there's a clear and consistent pipeline so that when we introduce this first phase, when we come with the subsequent phases, we should have built momentum, and you find that there should not be a lull between one phase and the subsequent phases. So we want to streamline it in such a way that it is predictable and is able to unlock economies of scale on the back of the demand that we'd have created. And like I said, it's going to help us to diversify the energy mix and ensure that we are able to achieve our ambition. So I want to take the opportunity to really wish you well, and once more to thank you for having expressed interest to participate. And I'm confident that working with the market partners will be able to transform the South African economy. So I I really want to wish you well, Kgosientsho and the team, and to you and the team and the ITP office, Shakira and the rest of the team. Well done and congratulations for spearheading us to this point of the program, and I'm confident that you will deliver in the same manner that you have delivered on the bid window. So thank you very much, and the best of luck to everyone on the call. Thanks, Kgosientsho.
Thank you, Minister, for such an insightful policy background and context to the ITP procurement program. Indeed, it's an eye opener, and it does set the scene. You did indicate, most importantly, the fact that currently the National Executive is about to consider the country's blueprint for power generation. And that's indeed a very, very welcome development. I'm sure the country, the continent, as well as the global community, they are awaiting with bated breath to see a gazetted version of the IRP 2025. Of course, you did highlight the significance of grid availability to our ambitions for our target and ambitions. To say that grid availability, it can therefore never be overemphasized. And it does also speak directly to the strategic and the significant role of the program that we have just recently launched through your leadership. On that note, Honorable Minister and everyone on the floor, you did make mention that we are going to stick to the timelines. The timelines are sacrosanct. There is no room for delays. And therefore, what it then means now is that now at this juncture then, let us go straight to our presenters. First on the line, it will be Alwyn Murray. Alwyn is from the National Transmission Company, South Africa, which is one of the entities of the department. Alwyn will take us through the 7 projects that have been sort of selected as part of the first phase of this ITP procurement program. Now, Alwyn, please take us through the overview of the 7 projects. Thank you. Over to you, Alwyn.
So, thank you, Kgosientsho. Right, just to add now on to what the Minister already said, the TDP requires us to, over the next 10 years, build over 14,000 kilometers of line and 132 MVA. So that is required to enable the network for new generation, but also to secure the loads on the network. So in order to do that, we cannot do it on our own as the NTCSA, and it is very important that we get private companies to assist us and in building this infrastructure. And that is what the importance is of this ITP program. And to kickstart that off, we identified for the ITP Phase 1 7 projects. So they mainly in the Northern Cape, the Northwest, and then there's one project that is in the Gauteng province. So in total then the program will consist of 2,630 MVA of transformation, 1,164 kilometer of line, and it will enable capacity of about 3,222 megawatts. So this is just showing geographically where the projects is. So the projects is not in any particular order, but you will see that the areas is the Groeipunt and the Namagrumos projects. They sit in the Northern Cape in the Namaqualand area. And then we have the Kimberley Phase 4 Beta Ferrum and the Hermes Mukudi 400 kV lines that is in the Kimberley area, in the Northwest as well as the Northern Cape. And then the Mahikeng Phase 1 project in the Northwest and the West Rand, yet the Yera Westgate 400 line then in Gauteng. Right, the first project is Aries Aggeneys. It is a 200 kilometer line from Aries substation to Aggeneys substation. It doesn't have any transformation in the project, and it will unlock 174 megawatts. The second project then is the Grootpunt 400 132 kV establishment. That is a double circuit line from Aggeneys to Grootpunt, totaling to 126 kilometers. And it have transformation needs. It's establishment of a new 400 kV yard at Grootpunt substation, and establishing 500 MVA of transformation. The third project then Kimberley Strengthening Phase 4 Boundary Ferm. It's a 265 kilometer line from Boundary in the Kimberley area to Ferm, which is in the Sishen, close to the Sishen mine there. And that is 265 kilometers, like I said, and then the capacity that it would unlock is 500 kilometer, and the project don't include any transformation. Kimberley Strengthening Phase 3, the Hermes Mukudi 400 kV line. So it's a line from Mukudi to Hermes, 240 kilometer line, and it would unlock a capacity of 250 megawatts. And again, there's no transformation that's included in this project. The Mahikeng Integration Phase 1 project, so that is a line from Pluto to the newly established Mahikeng substation. So it will be a total new substation that get built with 1,000 MVA of transformation, and the line length is 180 kilometers. The Nama 400 kV strengthening, Chromos 400 132 kV transformation. So that's in the Namakoland area, and it's 170 kilometers of line, which will go from Chromos to Nama and Grootpunt. And there is transformation included at Nama substation and Chromo substation. Each one of that would be new 400 kV HV yards and have each 500 MVA of transformation. So the last project is the West Rand strengthening. So it is a 36 kilometer line from Westgate substation to Yera substation, and it will unlock 400 megawatt of capacity, and it will include transformation 500 MVA 400 132 kV transformer, and then the project will establish 400 kV at Westgate. So that thank you very much.
Thank you, Alvin. That's quite informative. Colleagues, as I indicated, time is of essence. At this juncture, then, please allow me to take us through to the next presenter, Ms. Elizabeth Futama, who's our legal advisor at the ITP office. Liz will take us through the salient features of the legal pre-qualification criteria that are contained in the RFQ. Liz, over to you. Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. Thanks, Kgosientsho. As Kgosientsho have already alluded, I'm Elizabeth Futama from the ITP office. I will give you the summary of the structure of our RFQ before we come to our legal pre-qualification criteria. As an introduction, the RFQ is a formal invitation to experienced and committed consortium to submit their detailed RFQ response. At this stage, we are not yet selecting projects. Our focus is on identifying qualified participants who can then be invited to the RFQ stage. Okay, on the structure of our RFQ, it's divided into your Part A, which sets out the rules, and your Part B, which detail the pre-qualification criteria, requirements, and also 4 volumes that are contained under our Part B, which is Volume 1, Part 1, that detail the legal notices and the government policies. Our RFQ is structured into Part A, and which sets out the rules, Part B, which sets out the pre-qualification criteria, and 4 volumes that are contained under our Part B. Volume 1, Part 1, detail the legal notices and our government policies. Volume 1, Part 2 is our returnable schedules and forms, and Volume 2 is the legal pre-qualification criteria. Our Volume 3 covers the technical pre-qualification requirements, and our Volume 4 deals with the financial pre-qualification criteria. This structure is intended to give clarity to our participant and also to guide them in preparing their submission. This RFQ has been prepared and issued to set out the rules of participation in the RFQ stage, and to also provide information about the program and to assist our participant in preparing for comprehensive and compliant RFQ responses. It also issued to guide the participant in understanding the structure of the program, to enable the department to evaluate those responses in accordance with our pre-qualification criteria as set out in Part B of the RFQ. And also to guide the evaluation and the shortlist of the responses that meet the minimum capability threshold and designate them as pre-qualified bidders, and then to be invited to participate in the RFP stage. And the procurement approach, the department has elected to employ a 2-stage approach for this procurement process, that comprising of your stage 1, which is the RFQ, which looks only at the capability and the eligibility of the participant. And also stage 2 is the RFP, where bids responses are submitted, and those will be evaluated for appointment of preferred bidders. At this stage, which is the RFQ stage, respondents must demonstrate their capacity and legal standing and also their structure, while the in-detail commercial and technical detail will follow at the RFP stage. And just to note that only respondents who comply with all our RFQ requirements and paid the documentation fee will be evaluated. And the pre-qualified bidders at the end of the evaluation will then be eligible to participate in the RFP, which will be run on the principles of fairness and transparency and effective competition. And on our contracting model and commercial framework, we are going to provide the pre-qualified bidders with the draft project agreements that will be part of our RFP. The project agreement as an indicative list at the moment, it's your transmission service agreement, including the transmission sharing agreement. It's your transmission connection agreement, implementation agreement, independent engineer agreement, and the direct agreement. The more information on this project agreement will be shared in our RFP that will be issued to the market. Our next slide is our legal pre-qualification criteria. There are 7 key criteria that will be assessed under the legal evaluation. It will be your respondents' information and structure, your respondents' member information and structure, the anticipated project structure from the respondents, the participation of key members from the respondents, and also the requirement on participation of South African entities, and the requirement on participation by Black people in the respondent and also our volume 1, part 2, which is the returnable schedule of the RFQ. In detail, this is our legal pre-qualification criteria. The criterion 1, it talks to the respondent's detail. This criteria aims to establish the identity, the structure, the primary point of contact for each respondent submitting a response to the RFQ. The information provided under this criteria will enable the department to ensure proper identification of all the respondents that will be participating. And to the next criteria, which is the members' detail. In this criteria, the respondents are required to provide detailed information for each of their member forming part of their team, including their full legal names, their legal incorporation, and also their contact details. Where any member is a foreign entity, the respondent is required to provide the supporting documentation as evidence of that member, the legal standing and compliance with the regulatory requirement in its jurisdiction of incorporation. Our criterion 3 talks to the anticipated project structure of the bidder. This criterion seeks to provide the department with a clear and forward-looking view of how the respondent intends to structure its project company at the RFP stage. Respondents are required to submit an illustrative diagram that outlines the anticipated structure of the project company that they will establish should they be invited to submit a bid in the RFP phase. The diagram should include, among others, the project participant, the key members of the project company, the members who are Black or Black entities as defined in our procurement document, and any other members who will have the role in that project company. Our criterion 4 talks to the requirement on participation of key members in the respondents. Also, this criteria aims to ensure that the critical participant in the proposed transmission project, referred to as the key members, are firmly committed to the formulation of the project company. And this criteria forms a critical part of assessing the credibility, the capacity, and the alignment of the consortium with the program's legal and transformative objective. We are really requiring the bidder to adhere to this criteria as part of our pre-qualification criteria under legal. Another critical requirement is our South African entity participation. This criterion seeks to promote local ownership and the economic participation by requiring that a minimum of 47% equity in the project company must be held by South African entities. This requirement is critical for transformation and localization under this program, and it's aligned with our national procurement policy and the BBBEE objectives. Last but not least, our criterion 6 it's with regard to the Black people in the respondents or in the project company. Here we are requiring the respondent to ensure that there is a significant participation and the distribution of equity in the project company that are held by Black people. This is not a pre-requirement at the RFQ stage. However, we are encouraging the respondents to ensure this element is compliant with, as it will be a competitive bidding element under our RFP stage. To further than that, the department is encouraging the early stage involvement of Black equity participants in the procurement process, as this will ensure that they learn in the process of bid preparation and are equipped on how to participate in the RFP stage. Our last is criterion 7 that refers to the responses to our critical returnable schedule, which is in volume 1, part 2. Respondents are required also to submit the documents that are provided in our returnable schedule in detail, in complete and in proper form. And in order to be eligible to be evaluated in line with the RFQ, please, we request bidders to demonstrate compliance with the requirements that are in legal pre-qualification criteria and all other pre-qualification criteria of the other disciplines. I think that's all from my side. Kgosientsho, I thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Liz, for the detailed outline of the legal pre-qualification criteria that are contained in the RFQ. That is quite useful. I'm sure everyone on the platform is taking some notes and then will raise questions and put them on the chat box. Please do put them on the chat box on the Q&A so that at least you can be able to capture them accordingly. I must emphasize that not that it is more important than the rest of the criteria that Liz has highlighted. The 49% SAEP, it's quite critical, such that in order to be considered as being compliant for consideration, if you also pass other criteria, you have to make sure that you meet that criterion. So that criterion, basically, it requires you to have representation, or in your project company, there must be representation of SA companies. South African companies have to at least have a 49% share in the project company. We don't go further to outline the makeup of those companies, but what is critical is that at least to the extent that these are local companies and we've got very, very strict mechanisms to verify that, then you'll be able to meet that criteria. Now, on that note, I think then we can move to our next presenter, which is Ms. Lumka Mdlulwa. Lumka is our project finance specialist within the infrastructure finance department at the ITP office. And Lumka will take us through the financial pre-qualification criteria that are contained in the RFQ. Lumka, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kgosientsho. Good morning, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Lumka Mdlulwa, and I'll be covering the financial pre-qualification criteria for the ITP procurement program. So for the financial evaluation, we are looking at two criteria. The first one is the financing track record of the respondent. And secondly, we're looking at the financial standing of the respondent. And each financial criterion has a pass threshold, and respondents are required to meet or exceed the requirements for both criteria, and in order to pass the financial pre-qualification criteria. Looking at the first criteria, which is financing track record of the respondent, we are looking at to see the respondent's experience in sponsoring projects, in providing equity and raising project finance debt. And this experience should be demonstrated either by transmission projects or infrastructure projects. And with infrastructure, we mean it in the broad sense, and we're not sector specific. And the threshold around this criterion is we want a track record of raising corporate finance or project finance debt for at least 3 projects that have reached financial close in the last 5 years, with a combined value of 5 billion or more. And this track record must be held by one or more members of the respondent. So for demonstrating compliance, the respondent must identify a member or members in the event that they're using the track record of more than one member, and then submit an Appendix R1. This is contained in Volume 4, Part 2. It's a capital raising experience template, and the respondent must provide an Appendix R1 for each project that will be submitted to demonstrate the track record. What Appendix R1 contains is the project name, financial close date of the project, the amount of finance raised, the name of the funders, as well as the description of the member's role in the transaction. Looking at the second criterion, which is financial standing of the respondent, here we want that at least one of the entities meet the requirements under this criterion. And the entity, it can be either a member or ultimate provider of equity, but this excludes financial institutions or corporate finance provider. So at least one of these, if you select to provide two members, they must meet this as an individual. So on an individual basis, they must meet the criteria, the requirements under criterion 2. So the respondent can either select to meet this criterion using the global credit rating, or alternatively passing the net asset value test. The requirements under the global credit rating is we require a minimum, if the credit rating is issued by S&P or Fitch, triple B minus, or if it's issued by Moody's, a Baa3, or an equivalent investment grade rating issued by a credible rating agency of equal standing as the rating agencies that I've just mentioned above, and would require that the respondent submit a current credit rating report dated within 12 months of RFQ submission date. Alternatively, if the respondent opts to demonstrate the financial standing experience through the net asset value test, we require that the respondent has an average net asset value of 5 billion or more. This would be based on the latest 3 years of audited financial statements. So they submit the 3 years audited financial statements supported by an Appendix R2. This is a letter of financial review, which is issued either by an independent financial advisor or an auditor. What the Appendix R1 would confirm, it would be supported, or an annexure that contains the analysis that will be conducted by the independent financial advisor or auditor, which would confirm that the respondent meets the net asset value threshold, as well as it would confirm the accuracy and completeness of the assessment. Thank you, Kgosientsho.
Thank you, Lumka. Thank you. That was quite insightful and quite clear, I must say. But I'm sure there will be questions that will also come from the floor in terms of getting more clarity around those financial pre-qualification criteria that are relevant to this RFQ. Now, I think we are moving towards the end of our presentations, and we're going to take the last one, which is for the technical pre-qualification criteria. To give us that presentation, it will be Mr. Alwani Mutsilana, who is our specialist engineer within the IPP office. Alu, please take everyone through the technical pre-qualification criteria. Thank you. Over to you.
Good morning, colleagues, and thank you very much, Kgosientsho, for giving me the platform. So indeed, I'm Alwani Mutsilana. I'm the technical specialist at the IPP office. So I'll take you through the technical pre-qualification criteria, and just to give you the overview, it's that the purpose is to ensure that the respondent or the consortium or the project company has got enough capacity to undertake the project of this magnitude. And you will see that the criteria that we have, it's actually trying to assess the capacity for the respondent or any of its key member. So that key member might be a lead developer or any from the contracting structure, any of the contractors that were outsourced within the ITP framework. We have 4 key criteria. that are technical, and criteria number 2, it's subdivided or broken further into sub criteria. So these 4 criteria, 1, it's a project company capability, which just assesses the previous experience of the project company to see if they have been involved in similar ITP programs. And the second one, which is compliance to technical codes and standard, it checks if whether in the previous projects that are undertaken by the project company, there was adherence to relevant standards and codes together with statutory requirements. The third one, it's a project schedule. That one just assesses the capacity or capability of the company to deliver projects of this magnitude within the specified timelines. And the last one is to check and assess the technical performance in terms of contracted availability that the project company has been able to achieve, and if whether they were able to achieve that contracted capacity from the previous ITPs that they have undertaken. And now I'll take you to some level of details for each of these criteria. So in terms of, I've already mentioned that criterion 1, it's subdivided, and the first one being contracting structure. And here the respondent is mainly required to submit the organogram, and these organograms should cover 3 transmission lines ITPs and 3 substation ITPs. And we must emphasize that these ITPs must have been taken in the past 15 years. And in terms of this capacity of these ITPs, I'm sure you have already noticed that these projects have got transmission line scopes and substation scope. So in terms of the requirement, it is needed that the nominated ITPs in terms of transmission line should have been a transmission line of 100 kilometers in length and a substation scope with at least 250 MVA capacity, transformation capacity. So to summarize here and to make it clear that to satisfy this requirement, we expect 3 organograms related to transmission line ITPs and 3 organograms related to substation ITP. And the actual RFQ document gives details of what should be covered on this organogram, including the project description and further details of what should be in the project description. And it further requires that these organograms show the key participants that were involved or that the lead developer used as subcontractors in developing of these ITPs. So the next slide should give us the second sub-criterion, which is EPC contractor experience. In this one, we require that the respondent submit proof of capacity to be able to design, procure, construct, and commission of the transmission line ITPs and substation ITP. And we require that to satisfy this requirement, that the respondent must submit proof of EPC experience, which is submitting of the EPC contractors, 3 at minimum for transmission line ITPs and 3 for substation ITPs. And this should be accompanied by the reference letters, and these reference letters must come from the procurement office of that was responsible for that program, or should come from any government entity that is responsible as the buyer in that jurisdiction. And over and above that, we expect that the respondent fill and submit a form, which we have titled it A1. At the end, I'll give a bit of information on what's contained in the form. So this criterion speaks to the capacity of the project company to undertake operating and maintenance of the project at or within the framework of an ITP, in a way that we seek to understand if the project company or any one of its key members have been involved in maintenance and operating of this transmission infrastructure. So to satisfy this requirement, we asking that the project company or the respondent submit information on at least 3 transmission line and 3 substation ITPs, and to demonstrate that they have performed operation services for a minimum of 3 consecutive years, and that they have performed maintenance services for a minimum of 6 consecutive years. And we do emphasize that this should be at extra high voltage levels. And with that, we must emphasize, and we have seen from the project that these selected projects are at 400 kV, and that's a transmission level voltage. Hence, they need to emphasize experience EHV level. So, and coupled to that, the respondent must submit one standard operating procedure from any one of the 3 reference ITPs, both for substation and transmission line ITP. And we also request that the respondent submit the approved maintenance plan for the past 6 years. So meaning looking at the past 6 years, it will be the most recent maintenance plan for the past 6 years. And to support this, we're requesting that the respondent also submit a signed maintenance report and one inspection report. These that were conducted recently, and the actual document, the RFQ document, gives details of what we expect to be contained within a standard operating procedure and what should constitute a maintenance plan. So it speaks to the frequency and the type of activities that are part of the maintenance regime. Moving on to the second criterion, which is compliance with technical codes and standard. And here we're asking that the respondent submit the list of applicable national and international standards together with the codes, and including the statutory requirements from the form that we have provided, which is Form A2. So in Form A2, you will see the list of all reputable organizations that publishes or develop applicable standards and codes. So we are requesting that from that list, the developer submit the list of the standards from those reputable entities that develop standard. And these should be standards that the developer has employed in the previous projects or previous ITPs that they have undertaken. And we also request that since the list might not be, exhaustive, that the respondent add the entities and the standards that might be excluded on the list. And we also request that the respondent fills the form, which is Form A2, as an undertaking that the projects, the ITPs, will be designed and constructed and commissioned in accordance or in conformance to those standards issued by those authorities that we have listed on the form. So the next criteria should speak to the capacity to deliver the project of this magnitude within specified timelines. And to assess this requirement, we are going to use Form A1, which also specify the planned COD dates for the ITP projects that were selected or nominated from the past experience, and also gives the actual COD dates that was achieved. The intention is to assess if the actual COD date was achieved. To assess if the planned or the scheduled COD date was achieved. And coupled to that, the RFQ requires that if the COD date was not achieved, the respondent must give the motivation as to why it was not achieved, and the either recourse or the turnaround plan that was implemented to fast track or to lessen the impact of missing the COD date. The last criterion, which is number 4, it speaks to technical performance, and it seeks to assess if whether the project company from the previous ITPs that they have undertaken, if they are able to meet the contracted capacity, and in this case is the contracted availability factor, and which is average per annum. So we request that the respondent gives the yearly achieved contracted availability factor from the inceptions of the projects that they have submitted or that they have listed as reference projects for both substation ITPs and transmission line ITPs. And further to that, it requires that where there was a year where the respondent were not able to achieve the minimum contracted availability factor, the respondent must submit a letter which explain the reasons why and the turnaround strategy that was employed to turn around the performance. And this turnaround strategy must be signed off, and it must be in a company or the project company or the key member letterhead. So just to be clear, there are two forms. There's Form A1 for EPC experience, which is used both for EPC experience and the assessment of capacity to reach COD, and the details are in the form. And there's also Form A2, which is also speaks to the technical codes and standards, and the details are in the form. We thought we should mention this because we have seen that there is a confusion that we have picked up through the clarification questions. So indeed, there's only 2 forms. Thank you very much, Kgosientsho.
Thank you, Anu. That was quite insightful. we are, as I indicated, we are definitely moving towards the latter part of our 2-hour session. And at this juncture, we're then going to be starting with our Q&A. But before we do that, I just need to make the point that the team that has delivered these presentations today, they form part of a broader multidisciplinary project team that is behind the ITP procurement program. And as such, they do have intricate knowledge of what is contained in the RFQ suite of documents. But I must also encourage everyone at their own leisure to sort of interrogate the RFQ, especially the requirements, which will then allow you to be appointed as a pre-qualified bidder. And if you do not understand some of the elements of the requirements, please feel free to engage the office through the normal channels. As I indicated, if you go to clause 24, the contact policy of the RFQ, you will be guided there in terms of how do you pose your questions. And as indicated in our Q&A, we will endeavor to respond to all of the questions. We do have a limitation of time. Definitely, we are not going to be able to answer all the questions today. However, we do promise that we will give written answers to all the written questions that we would have received. So it's in your best interest then that you make sure that you write to us and seek clarity on some of the things that you don't understand. Now, we need then to turn back to our 4 speakers, which is Alvin, Liz, Lunga, as well as Alu, who will then be joined by Ms. Lina Mangondo, who's our head of legal at the IPP office, as well as Ms. Elsa Stradom, who's the head of infrastructure finance and also our interim head at the IPP office. They will be then filling in the questions that we would have received prior to this session, and then which will all form part of the briefing note that will be issued very, very soon. Elsa will also share with us the timelines in terms of how soon can you expect the responses to these questions. Now, let me then go straight to Alvin as our first presenter. Alvin, you have outlined quite a lot of detail in terms of project selection for this ITP phase, the first phase. But can you please briefly touch on the significance of starting with these projects for the first phase of the program? Over to you, Alvin.
Right. To first start off, the NTCSA developed the transmission development plan that is required to meet the forecasted needs of load customers, and maybe more significantly, the integration of new generation into the transmission grid. This plan is ambitious, like I said, and the ITP program is one of the avenues that the NTCSA will use to accelerate the TDP implementation. So the specific projects for the ITP Phase 1 program was chosen in such a way that it will enable the unlocking of the capacity of to integrate renewable generation, primarily in the Greater Cape region, but also in the Northwest. We also looked for projects that would be implemented, would be ready for implementation by the first quarter of 2026 to de-risk the program then as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvin. As I indicated, we will provide the written responses to the questions that have been asked. Then the next question I will direct to our interim head of the office, Elsa. There seems to be a perception that the South African entities, they are deliberately being excluded. So we have evidence that from the questions that we have received. So they are excluded as respondents by the virtue of the requirements and the criteria. In your view, one, is that perception valid or justified? Secondly, is it a fair statement? Over to you, Elsa. Thank you.
Good morning, Kgosientsho, and good morning to all our respondents that's online. And thank you for that question. I think we need to be very clear. South African entities are not excluded. The specific requirement for South African equity participation of 49% has been covered by many speakers during the morning. So participants are and also the minister has been very clear on what we want to achieve as part of this program in terms of localization, in terms of skills development, in terms of preparing ourselves as part of phase one for future rollouts, and how important this program is also for the economy and economic development. So participants to phase one is at liberty to structure themselves in such a way that they meet the requirements of the RFQ. This ITP is the first of its kind, and I think it is therefore critical that that in the way in which we've structured the requirements of the RFQ, that we ensure that we will be successful in bringing on board projects that can be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained for the whole term of the PPA in a successful way and in the timelines that we are also seeking to meet. So definitely assurance that local participants not excluded, and that entities can partner as they see fit to meet the requirements for phase one. Thank you for that, Kgosientsho.
Thank you, Elsa. I'm sure that's very, very comforting and a huge relief for local entities. Our third question, it goes to Lumka. You will recall that in the RFQ, we have currently not settled on the procurement model. In fact, the contracting model for this first phase. So there's two that are being considered, which is your build, the bot as well as the boot model. Now, the question that we have received then is whether is it going to be a boot or a bot, and secondly, what will be the duration of the concession period? Lumka, over to you.
Thanks, Kgosientsho, for the question. So as you all would recall and would be aware that in December, we issued the RFI, Request for Information for the program, and this was closed in February 2025. And subsequently, we assessed the responses. And from the responses, there was the market, including lenders, had indicated that they support both models, the bot as well as the boot. However, there was a strong preference for the boot model. Similarly, for the concession period, there was a support for a period between 25 to 30 years. So as part of the RFP drafting process, these are concepts that we are finalizing and will be made available once the RFP is out. Decisions will be made based on that, at that stage. Thanks, Kgosientsho.
Thank you, Lumka. Indeed, we take cue from the market because we want to put out there procurement documents that are responsive and sort of talk to the circumstances of the market, what will make the market willing to respond and be able to put money into this kind of initiative. The next question then is directed at Lena. Lena, what we want to understand is what kind of support will government provide regarding obtaining your rights of way, your servitudes, the access rights for the ITP projects, amongst others, and secondly, who will be responsible for securing these rights? Thank you.
Thank you, Kgosientsho, and good morning, everyone. From a servitude or rights of way perspective, NTCSA initiated the process of securing all servitudes and applicable rights of way for the transmission infrastructure project. This is also aligned with the perspective that for the market, for this phase, the first phase, we're looking at late stage tenders, looking at projects that are principally in a position where they are ready to be implemented. We have also between the Minister of Electricity and Energy and the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure also facilitated engagements at an intergovernmental level to ensure that in relation to those outstanding rights of way, there is a collaboration between the various government stakeholders, being DPWI, DE, NTCSA, as well as then roping in various other government stakeholders who either have land that will be required to facilitate this program, or looking at the process of expropriation in relation to land that is privately owned, which NTCSA has not achieved agreements with the particular landowners. We have advanced that process. The projects are in various stages of having secured rights of way, and we are planning to obtain the rest as we proceed with the tender process. We also recognize that in a number of instances, we may find ourselves in a position where by the time we get to the RFP, we would not have secured all land rights. And for that, we're seeking to ensure that within the TSA, those particular land parcels, there's a regime to ensure that those are secured. However, in relation to each of the land parcels, what has been secured, further information will be provided to pre-qualified bidders in the data room to enable them to take a view on the status of those land rights that have been secured. Thank you.
Thank you, Lina. Thank you so much. Lumka, back to you. Question around the CGV. It's one of those that have drawn so much attention, of course, not surprising. Please just share with us to what extent is the first phase of this ITP procurement program dependent on the successful launch of the CGV. Thank you.
Thanks, Kgosientsho. So as you all are aware, the ITP program is the first of its kind for the country, and that's in terms of the private sector participation in transmission at this magnitude. And as you also are aware, our previous IPP programs under the IPP procurement program, they were backed by the government guarantee, which had no fee attached to it. And there was some impact on that, on the country's balance sheet due to that. And as a result, we are trying to move away from that. And we are then introducing a fee-based guarantee vehicle in the form of the credit guarantee vehicle for this program to back the program and make it more bankable. And however, the work around this is still underway and will be provided as part of the RFP.
Thank you, Lumka. Whilst you are still on the platform, I've got a related question for you. Yes, you've just indicated that more details on the CGV will follow. But what the question seeks to understand is the bankability of the letter of support. Can you please explain that? How bankable is that letter of support from the National Treasury? Thank you.
Okay. So the CGV is anticipated to be operational mid-2026. And as a result of this, then there's a need to make interim arrangements. And this is anticipated to take the form of a letter of support from National Treasury. And this letter of support will then mirror the key support elements that are anticipated in the CGV. Thanks, Kgosientsho.
Thanks, Lumka. Alvin, back to you. Question related to the projects. We have quite a few questions on the timelines as well as the ESCOM interface. That's what the question wants to understand. How will then the ESCOM grid connection agreements and associated technical studies be coordinated under the ITP framework to avoid the duplication of effort between ESCOM and the bidders? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kgosientsho. Yeah, so the timelines for the projects for us is of utmost importance. We don't want to see unnecessary slippages from the required dates. Those timelines will be stipulated in the RFP. And then to enable the quickest turnaround on the projects, like was stated by Lena, we have done a lot of work to de-risk the projects. So most of the projects should be ready for execution by the end of the year, or early in 2026. And in order to not have duplication of work, the work that the NTCSA have done will be shared with the pre-qualified bidders in the data room. So that will be things like the concept designs, the detailed designs, environmental authorizations, EMPRs, or the servitude details, for instance, the special conditions of the landowners. So all of that would be provided to the pre-qualified bidders, but we were going to provide it on a non-reliant basis, which means that the bidder will have to assess what is provided and then make his own decision on how we want to proceed and tender for the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Yes, as I have noted, we do have quite a lot of questions on the Q&A platform. However, as I indicated once more, we will not be able to go through all of them, but we will endeavor to provide written responses. Maybe if I can just tap on one of the questions on the platform, which will be directed at Lena. Lena, please do grab a glass of water because I've got quite a few for you. So I'll keep you maybe for the next 5 minutes or so. This question is in relation to the pre-qualified bidder guarantee, which is Appendix F. Now, can you please clarify the timing for submission of this guarantee, since it is apparently an RFQ response returnable schedule? However, in terms of clause 18 of the RFQ Part A, which are the general requirements, rules, and provisions, then the pre-qualified bidder guarantee submission, it will be required only upon receipt of the department's notification confirming status of the preferred bidder, the pre-qualified bidder appointment, as well as the invitation to participate at an RFQ stage, RFP stage. Lena, can you please provide clarity on the handling of the pre-qualified bidder guarantee? It's very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Kgosientsho. I think just to provide context, we have provided Appendix F, so respondents are aware of the security that is required once they are appointed as a pre-qualified bidder. As indicated in clause 18.4.1.2, that is only required once you're informed of your appointment as a pre-qualified bidder. From a process, and I think just for everyone's clarity, typically what happens is you have you're given your letter of award as a pre-qualified bidder on the basis of the conditions set out in that pre-qualified bidder. One of the conditions would be for you to submit a guarantee. So we are upfront communicating and providing clarity to the market on the key terms and conditions associated with that pre-qualified bidder guarantee, which has to be in place until the expiry date or such extended time period as may be communicated by the department. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena. As I indicated, just please stay for a few minutes. Everyone would recall that the minister in his keynote address did allude to the just dimension of our energy transition. Now, of course, that just dimension is sort of contained in our economic development elements that we are pursuing under this program. Obviously, at the RFQ stage, we are not providing the details. However, we'll do so at the RFP stage. Can you please perhaps just give us a high level of some of the insights that can be given thought to as the ED imperatives that drive this program? Thank you.
Thank you. So within the RFQ, we thought that it's important to highlight the economic development objectives, which are aligned with our broader economic development objectives around participation by locals, South Africans, and this cascades from the element of Black equity participation, which is shareholding by Black people. While we don't necessarily evaluate it at this point, we do encourage in relation to that element for respondents to actually actively engage Black equity participants to ensure that they're involved from the onset, so they can also have the learnings. It is the first tender, but over time, as the market matures locally, we do anticipate local participation. So we do want those players involved upfront, so they can also learn through the process. Over and above that, as indicated by the Minister, we will look at, as part of the competitive evaluation elements, the commitments that are made in relation to local community participation. You would note that as part of the SAEP, we've limited local community participation to 5%. This is to ensure that ultimately, when one considers ownership, we do have tangible and active participation in the context of SAEP, in line with our broader economic growth and development objectives and participation by locals. We also then will consider skills transfer, as well as job creation, ownership by women, as well as then the participation of SMMEs in the form of enterprise development across the value chain. Thank you. Sorry, and I forgot to mention local content, which is also a key pillar.
Of course.
Oh, yes,
of course,
thank you.
That's a key pillar. It also finds expression in the department's key priorities as it relates to industrialization. Okay, Lena, perhaps then can you then clarify how many projects can be or are intended to be awarded to one consortium, and how will the risk of collision be managed, if any?
So within the RFP, we intend to, at this point, obviously respondents are being pre-qualified to be able to submit a response under the RFP. Within the context of the RFP, the intention is to actually provide further clarity to pre-qualified bidders around the grouping of projects and how many projects they can then be awarded. We are looking to ensure that through that process, we do manage concentration and over-reliance on one consortium to be able to deliver all 7 projects, and also to try and manage collusion. So it is something that we've considered, and further information and details will be articulated in the RFP.
Thanks, Lena. Perhaps lastly for this round, the question wants to understand if equity financial investors will be restricted from participating in only one single consortium.
Thank you. So from an equity investor perspective, it needs to be clear. We do have provisions within the RFQ that speak to how affiliates can participate within one consortium. We also want to ensure that align with the provisions of the Competition Act, and also to try and ensure that there is no collusion, that you don't have cross-pollination of the same participants across different respondents. So from that perspective, equity investors would have to identify a single, should I say, consortium that they seek to participate in, and then partner with that particular consortium. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena. Back to you, Lumka. what is the intended funding model for the project, and how will the transmission tariffs be structured and regulated once the project is operational? Lumka?
Thanks, Kgosientsho. So the funding model will be on a project finance basis. It will be similar to our IPP program, similar to the REAP program, the BEST program, where you set up an SPV to deliver the project. So in terms of the tariff structure, we are looking at making a monthly availability payment to the transmission service provider. And as well as there will be deductions for unavailability when it comes to this monthly payment. But yeah, the payment mechanism is still under consideration with the drafting of the RFP. So more detail around that will be provided. Thanks.
Thank you, Lumka. Maybe then let me jump to Alu around the technical pre-qualification criteria. Now, on the technical experience requirement criterion, does the experience have to be strictly on ITP projects for the EPC, or will experience on any other projects implemented under the different program structures also be considered? Alu?
Thank you, Kgosientsho. Yes, indeed, looking at the complexity of the project and the fact that this is new and it's the first phase, the experience required is that of the respondent or the developer who has undertaken similar projects, meaning similar to the ITP. And it will mean that we expect that the ITP from his contracting structure, the ITP I'm referring to, the developer in this case. So from the contracting structure that he employed in the previous ITP projects that he has undertaken, he will have an EPC contractor that he worked with, or that function could have been done internally. So it is the experience of the EPC contractor within the ITP framework, or anything equivalent to that, depending on what it is called in different jurisdictions. But indeed, it is ITP experience, previous experience, or within the ITP framework or model. Thank you.
Thank you, Alu. As I indicated, we've got time constraints and we are moving towards our hard stop, which is 11 o'clock. I think as we move towards this Q&A session, perhaps maybe let me then jump to Alvin to just tackle one of the questions that I believe maybe to be quite useful for everyone on the platform to know about. Maybe before Alvin comes in, or I pose a question to Alvin, I also want to encourage everybody once more to please post your questions on the Q&A. At this stage, we will not be able to take questions directly. I see some of the hands are being raised on the platform. However, due to the limitations of time, we are not able to accommodate that. So Alvin, what the question then seeks to understand is, will the IGCAR rules be applicable for the ITPs? Now, the IGCAR, for those who do not know, is the interim grid capacity allocation rules that are used for allocation of grid capacity. And then secondly, what about the NTSA monopoly works? That said, once the market operator becomes effective, now NTSA may also be a network provider as expected. Now, how will the system operator be seen to be independent of NTSA? Alvin?
Yeah, I think to understand the issue around the IGA rules, one need to understand what is the IGA rules for. So IGA is really to allocate grid capacity and make sure that people are not hogging capacity. So it looks at the readiness of the project to be implemented before capacity is allocated to that particular project. So that being said, the ITPs don't compete with anybody for capacity. They actually are creating capacity, and also the projects that is in the ITP tenders is already identified and it's required by the TDP or the NTCSA. So the IGCAR rules will not apply to the ITP program. Then the second question is about the monopoly cost. So it is foreseen that there would be some cost payable by the successful tenderer, firstly for work that was already done by the NTCSA, but also then for the oversight and coordination on the NTCSA owned equipment and sites, as well as to get things coordinated within the NTCSA if there's any approvals required. So that monopoly cost we are foreseeing that would be specified in the RFP, so it would not necessarily be a application process like with the IPPs, but the successful bidder will have to pay those fees. I think the last one is a bit more difficult for me to answer, which is around the system operator being independent from the NTCSA. So currently the system operator is sitting in the NTCSA, and it is part of it. So but what need to be understood is that the NTCSA cannot bid for any of these projects in this time, and therefore, you know, they cannot really be a conflict of interest. The relationship currently between the system operator, NTCSA, and the ITPs will be that of a buyer-seller relationship. That being said, it doesn't mean that if the ministry decide to liberate the industry even further, and the system operator eventually get taken out of the NTCSA, then things can change where the system operator then is a total separate entity, and the NTCSA in some way might have to compete then with the ITPs on a level grounding for work, or you know, depending on the model that is chosen, and these things are not final at this stage, there might be an allocation of work to the NTCSA, and the competition is just on certain projects. But yeah, just I think everybody can really feel safe that the system operator have only one intention here, and that is to make this work, and therefore that it would not really work if they favor one entity above another. And that is also actually stipulated in the grid code, that you need to give you know, equal access to everybody, and that will go for the transmitters as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvin. Maybe then as we move towards closing, let me just bring Lena for the last time, just to give us a last bite. Lena, can you please clarify, can you please clarify on the qualification of individual bidders and organization? That is, if an organization intends on taking up 51% of a consortium, will then such be defined only, or which you are saying which will be defined at RFP stage? Can then that organization be able to qualify individually? Lena?
Thank you, Kgosientsho. We have the concept of a lead member. However, that lead member needs to be supported by other participants or members within the consortium. One of them, as we indicated, is in relation to SAEP. As long as that 50, you can't, so then having regard to the structures that are contemplated within the legal qualification criteria, and you know, having regard to the requirements from a finance perspective and a technical perspective, it becomes difficult. In fact, I think it would not be possible to then meet the RFQ requirements if it is only on an individual basis. A participant who then seeks to look at other structures within the RFP stage. So to the extent that a developer is coming as a company and able to meet all of the qualification criteria under the legal pre-qualification criteria, technical pre-qualification criteria, and financial pre-qualification criteria, having regard to all of the constituent parts of those pre-qualification criteria, they can do that. However, as an individual, only meeting the 51% and not meeting all of the other requirements, it would not be considered compliant with the pre-qualification requirements under the RFQ. Thank you.
Thank you, Lina. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. We do know and acknowledge that there's quite a lot of questions that we have not been able to answer, but the good thing is that we do have them on record. And as we indicated, we will address these questions through a briefing note, which will then issue in due course. We will try to turn around these briefing notes as quick as possible, recognizing the timeframes that we have for us to conclude this pre-qualification process. You will recall the 23rd of September is the submission date of the RFQ responses, and then subsequent to that, we're intending to release the RFP in November. So in that note, then that officially brings us to the end of this Q&A process. Then for closing remarks, I will then hand over to Ms. Elsa Stradom, who is our interim head of the office, to just give us the vote of thanks as well as the closing remarks. And after which then we'll then be at a point where we can then officially adjourn the sessions. Elsa, over to you. Thank you. And thanks to everyone who participated and sort of responded to the rules that governed this session. Thank you so much. Elsa?
Thank you, Kgosientsho, and thank you to everybody that has participated today. We were definitely delighted with the number of participants, and we are definitely looking very forward to receiving the submissions on the RFQ on the 23rd of September. Please also allow me to thank all the participants and all our speakers. You've done a wonderful job today. And as Kgosientsho has said, we will definitely endeavour to respond to all the questions that you've put on the chat box, and also that has come through as clarifications already. We are endeavouring to send out the first briefing notes on Monday, on the 1st of September. Responses to those briefing notes, so that also to allow participants to consider those responses as part of their submissions. At this point, I would also just like to thank the department and the ministry for their guidance and their support, also to the IPP office in rolling out this definitely groundbreaking and historic program for us as a country. Also, I do want to just emphasize again on the timelines and the key timeline, and also in terms of the fact that these timelines are not moving. We are all efforts are being put to making sure that we keep to those timelines, and that we will be able to deliver in that regard. So the key next milestone, as has been repeated more than once today, is around the 23rd of September, which will then be the date on which we will receive the submissions on the RFQ, and the process will then start with the evaluation of those submissions, whereby we will endeavour to, by the end of November, announce these pre-listed or pre-qualified bidders, as well as who will then be able to receive the RFP. So we do have some indicative dates there in front of you going forward, that we will have a conference on the RFP in January of next year, and then also that we are looking towards the closure of the RFP and the submission of bids towards May of 2026 then. So with those few words, again, we wish you all the best in putting together your submissions, and we're looking forward to receive them. Thank you, Kgosientsho, and thank you also for leading us in this Respondents Conference today. Thank you.
Thank you, Elsa, and thanks to everyone. The session is adjourned. Thank you. Have a great day ahead. Bye, everyone.